The morning sun painted the rocky hills of Kepler 442b in shades of orange and red. Sergeant Kim Dae-ho wiped sweat from his forehead as he checked the automated defense turrets around Firebase Delta 7. It was supposed to be a quiet day. The 47th Heavy Infantry Division had been patrolling this sector for 3 months without seeing a single enemy ship. Dae-ho was a combat engineer from Seoul, Earth. At 28 years old, he had spent 6 years fixing things that other soldiers broke. He preferred working with machines over people. Machines were simple. They either worked or they did not. People were complicated. The firebase sat at the mouth of Hangman's Valley, a narrow pass through the Kepler Mountains. Beyond those mountains lived 50,000 human colonists in New Busan City. They were farmers, teachers, doctors, and shopkeepers who had traveled across the galaxy to build new lives. The firebase was their shield against the hostile galaxy beyond. Captain Park Minji walked up to Dae-ho as he finished his morning checks. She was 32 and had been his commanding officer for 2 years. Minji was tough, but fair. She treated her soldiers like family. "How are our metal friends looking today, Sergeant?" she asked, pointing at the turrets. "All systems green, Captain. Power cells at full charge. Ammunition stocks are good for at least a week of heavy fighting," Dae-ho replied. Minji nodded. "Let's hope we never need to find out." The firebase housed 47 soldiers from Earth, Mars, and the lunar colonies. They had built it into the mountainside using local stone and steel from orbit. The base had sleeping quarters, a command center, weapon storage, and a small medical bay. Most importantly, it controlled the only road through the mountains. At noon, the first warning came through the communications array. Lieutenant Han Jisu's voice crackled over the radio from the outer sensor post. "Delta 7, this is Sensor Post Alpha. I'm reading multiple contacts coming out of hyperspace, looks like a full battle group." Captain Minji grabbed the radio. "How many ships, Alpha?" "At least 30 vessels, Captain. They're big ones, definitely not human." Dae-ho felt his stomach tighten. 30 ships meant thousands of enemy soldiers. The 47th Division had been scattered across 6 different outposts. Firebase Delta 7 was alone. "All stations, this is Delta 7 Command," Minji broadcast. "We have confirmed hostile contacts in system. Begin emergency protocols immediately." The base came alive with activity. Soldiers ran to their positions. Dae-ho rushed to the defense control room and began bringing all systems online. The turrets hummed to life, their sensors scanning the sky for targets. 2 hours later, the first enemy dropships appeared over the valley. They were sleek black vessels with curved hulls that looked like giant insects. These belonged to the Vorthak Empire, a species of tall reptilian warriors who had been expanding their territory for decades. The dropships landed just outside weapon range and began unloading troops. Through his binoculars, Dae-ho could see hundreds of enemy soldiers forming up for attack. They were 7 feet tall with green scales and carried plasma rifles that glowed with deadly energy. "Contact command," Minji ordered. "Tell them we need immediate reinforcement." The communications officer tried for several minutes before shaking his head. "Captain, I'm getting nothing. They're jamming all frequencies." Minji's face went pale. Without communications, they could not call for help. The nearest human forces were 3 days away, assuming they even knew what was happening. The first attack came at sunset. 100 Vorthak warriors charged up the valley road, their plasma rifles lighting up the growing darkness. The firebase's automated turrets opened fire, sending streams of bullets down the mountainside. The enemy soldiers took cover behind rocks and returned fire. Dae-ho watched from the command center as green plasma bolts struck the base's walls. The energy weapons left glowing holes in the stone. One bolt hit near his position, filling the air with the smell of melted rock. The battle continued for 3 hours. The turrets cut down dozens of attacking aliens, but more kept coming. Captain Minji moved between defensive positions, encouraging her soldiers and coordinating their fire. "They're testing us," she told Dae-ho during a brief pause in the fighting. "This is just the beginning." She was right. As dawn broke on the second day, Dae-ho counted at least 500 enemy soldiers gathered in the valley below. More dropships arrived every hour, bringing fresh troops and heavy weapons. The second assault was much worse. The Vorthak brought portable artillery that fired explosive plasma shells. The base shook with each impact. Several outer defenses were destroyed, and 3 soldiers were wounded. Captain Minji called all her remaining troops to the command center. 38 soldiers stood before her, their faces grim but determined. "I won't lie to you," she said. "We're outnumbered 20-1. Command doesn't know we're here. No one is coming to help us." She paused and looked each soldier in the eye. "But those 50,000 people in New Busan are counting on us. If we break, if we run, they all die. Every man, woman, and child in that city depends on us holding this pass." Daeho felt something stir in his chest. He thought about his younger sister back on Earth. She had sent him pictures of her new baby just last week. That baby deserved to grow up in a universe where good people stood against evil. "We're going to make these aliens pay for every meter of ground," Minji continued. "We're going to show them what happens when they threaten human families." The soldiers cheered, raising their rifles in the air. Daeho found himself shouting along with them. The 3rd day brought the heaviest fighting yet. Wave after wave of Vorthak warriors threw themselves against the firebase's defenses. The automated turrets ran constantly, their barrels glowing red-hot from continuous fire. By evening, the base had lost half its defensive positions. Ammunition was running low, and 8 soldiers were dead. Captain Minji had taken shrapnel in her left arm but refused medical treatment. As night fell, she found Daeho repairing a damaged turret in the north tower. "How long can we hold?" she asked quietly. Daeho looked out at the valley where thousands of enemy campfires twinkled like deadly stars. "Maybe 2 more days, Captain. 3 if we're lucky." Minji nodded slowly. She pulled out a small device that glowed with blue light. It was the quantum communicator, the most advanced piece of technology on the base. "If something happens to me, Daeho, you take this. The authorization codes are Alpha 77 Charlie. You understand?" Daeho stared at the device. Those codes would give him control of the planetary defense grid, the automated systems that protected all human colonies on Kepler 442b. "Captain, I'm just an engineer. I fix things." "Sometimes fixing things means holding them together when everything else falls apart," she replied. "I trust you, Sergeant. Don't let me down." The next morning brought devastating news. A massive orbital bombardment had struck the base during the night. When the smoke cleared, Daeho found himself buried under rubble in what remained of the command center. He dug himself out slowly, his body aching from the blast. Around him lay the broken remains of Firebase Delta 7 and the bodies of his fellow soldiers. He searched frantically through the debris until he found Captain Minji trapped under a fallen beam. She was still alive but badly injured. Blood ran from a wound on her head and her breathing was shallow. "The communicator," she whispered, pressing the glowing device into his hands. "Alpha 77 Charlie. Hold the line, Daeho. Hold the line." Her eyes closed, and she was gone. Daeho knelt there for a long moment holding the quantum communicator as enemy voices echoed through the valley below. He was alone now, the last defender of Firebase Delta 7. Behind him lay 50,000 innocent, people who trusted him to keep them safe. He stood up slowly and looked out at the approaching enemy army. There were thousands of them now, confident that the human resistance was finally broken. They were wrong. Daeho activated the communicator and sent a message to Earth Command. His voice was calm and steady. "This is Sergeant Kim Daeho, Firebase, Delta 7. I am the last man standing. Firebase Delta 7 remains operational. We'll hold position." He closed the channel and began to prepare his defenses. The real battle was about to begin. Day 1 of Daeho's lone defense began before sunrise. He moved through the ruined firebase like a ghost, checking every system that still worked. The main power generator was damaged but running. 3 automated turrets remained operational. Most importantly, the quantum communicator still connected him to the planetary defense network. The Vorthak commander, General Theiss, stood on a hill overlooking the human base. He was 8 feet tall with dark green scales and yellow eyes that missed nothing. Theiss had conquered 12 worlds for the Empire. He expected this final assault to take less than an hour. "Send a patrol to confirm the humans are dead," he ordered, his lieutenant. Then we marched through the pass to the city. 20 Vorthak warriors approached the firebase cautiously. Their thermal scanners showed extensive damage and very little power usage. Everything suggested the base was abandoned. Daiho watched them through a damaged security camera. He had spent the night rigging new traps and moving equipment. The firebase looked dead, but it was very much alive. When the first alien stepped through the main gate, motion sensors triggered a hidden turret. The weapon emerged from a pile of rubble and opened fire. 6 Vorthak soldiers fell before the others could take cover. "Impossible," General Thiss muttered, watching through his binoculars. "The base should be destroyed." The surviving patrol members tried to advance again. This time explosives hidden under loose stones tore apart their formation. Only 3 aliens made it back to report. "The humans have left automated defenses," the patrol leader gasped. "The base defends itself." But General Thiss was not convinced. His thermal sensors showed one human heat signature moving inside the base. One human who seemed to be everywhere at once. Daiho used the base's internal tunnels to move between positions. He would fire from the north wall, then crawl through maintenance shafts to appear at the south gate minutes later. To the watching aliens, it seemed like the base was defended by a full squad of soldiers. The Vorthak tried again at noon. This time they sent 50 warriors in a coordinated assault. They expected to overwhelm any remaining defenses through sheer numbers. Daiho was ready for them. He had programmed the surviving turrets to fire in sequence, creating overlapping fields of death. When the aliens charged the main entrance, automated guns cut them down from 3 directions. But the turrets were not his only weapons. Daiho had rigged emergency lights to flash in patterns that triggered seizures in Vorthak vision. He used the base's speaker system to play recordings of human voices, making it sound like dozens of soldiers were coordinating the defense. By evening, General Thiss had lost over 100 warriors to a supposedly dead firebase. His soldiers were beginning to whisper among themselves. They spoke of a ghost that appeared wherever they attacked, a phantom that could not be killed. "It is just one human," Thiss told his officers during their evening briefing. "One frightened soldier, hiding in the ruins." But even as he said it, Thiss felt doubt creeping into his mind. How could one human cause such destruction? How could one man appear in so many places at once? Day 2 brought heavier fighting. Thiss committed 300 warriors to a massive assault, attacking from all sides simultaneously. Surely one human could not defend against such numbers. Daiho had spent the night preparing for exactly this scenario. He triggered a landslide that blocked the western approach, forcing the aliens into a narrow corridor where his remaining turrets had clear shots. When they tried to climb the eastern wall, pre-placed explosives brought down half the mountainside. The attack lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Vorthak had gained only 50 meters of ground at the cost of 80 more warriors. "General," Thiss stared at the firebase in disbelief. The human was not just defending, he was winning. That night, Daiho allowed himself 2 hours of sleep. His body ached from crawling through tunnels and carrying heavy equipment. His hands were cut and bleeding from handling sharp metal and broken stone, but he could not stop. Every hour he held was another hour for the evacuation ships to reach New Busan City. He thought about Captain Minji's last words. "Hold the line." It seemed impossible, but Daiho had always been good at making impossible things work. Machines, weapons, defenses, they all followed the same basic rules. You just had to understand how they fit together. Day 3 brought something new: fear. The Vorthak warriors moved more slowly now, checking every shadow twice before advancing. They had started to believe their own stories about the ghost in the mountain. General Thiss noticed the change in his troops. Warriors who had fought bravely on a dozen worlds now hesitated before entering battle. They made protective signs with their claws and muttered prayers to their war gods. "The human is just a man," Thiss roared at his assembled army. "He bleeds like any other creature. Find him and kill him." But finding Daiho was easier said than done. The sergeant had turned the entire firebase into his personal weapon. Every room was a trap, every corridor a killing ground. He appeared where the aliens least expected him and vanished before they could react. The turrets finally ran out of power on the afternoon of day 3. Daiho watched sadly as his automated guardians went silent one by one. Now he was truly alone, armed only with his rifle and whatever weapons he could salvage from the battlefield. The Vorthak sensed the change immediately. Without the constant chatter of automatic weapons, the base seemed quieter, more vulnerable. General Thys ordered another assault. 200 warriors stormed the firebase as the sun set on day 3. They expected to find a single terrified human hiding in the ruins. Instead, they found something much worse. Daiho had spent his time well. Using parts from broken turrets, he had built dozens of smaller weapons that fired from hidden positions. Captured Vorthak plasma rifles were rigged to remote triggers and placed throughout the base. Even the bodies of fallen aliens were booby-trapped with grenades. The assault turned into a nightmare. Warriors would enter empty rooms only to be cut down by crossfire from weapons they could not see. Plasma bolts came from every direction, fired by an enemy who seemed to be made of shadows and smoke. When the attack finally broke, only half the Vorthak warriors made it back to their lines. The others lay scattered throughout the firebase, victims of a defense that defied all logic and reason. General Thys stood in his command tent, staring at reports he could barely believe. In 3 days, one human had killed over 300 of his warriors. 300 trained soldiers of the Vorthak Empire, defeated by a single man with a handful of broken weapons. General, his lieutenant said carefully, the warriors are saying the mountain is cursed. They believe the human spirit has merged with the stone itself. Thys wanted to dismiss such superstition, but he had seen the impossible defense with his own eyes. How else could one man hold back an entire army? Outside his tent, Vorthak soldiers gathered around their fires and spoke in hushed voices. They told stories of a phantom warrior who could appear anywhere, strike without warning, and vanish like morning mist. Some claimed to have seen him in the darkness between the ruins, a figure in human armor who moved like death itself. The stories grew with each telling. The ghost could walk through walls. He could see in perfect darkness. His weapons never missed and his rage never cooled. He was the spirit of every human who had ever died defending their home, given form and fury by the mountain itself. Daiho knew nothing of the legends growing around him. He was too busy staying alive. On day 4, he ambushed a supply convoy and captured enough ammunition to last another 2 days. He also found medical supplies which he desperately needed for his infected wounds. As he worked by the light of a small lamp, cleaning his rifle for the 100th time, Daiho thought about home. He wondered if his sister's baby had started walking yet. He wondered if his parents still tended their small garden behind their sole apartment. Most of all, he wondered if what he was doing mattered. 50,000 people depended on him, but he was just one man. How long could he really hold out against such impossible odds? The answer came with the dawn of day 4, when General Thys launched his most desperate attack yet. This time, he would not underestimate the human ghost. This time, he would bring everything he had. Daiho saw them coming long before they reached the firebase. 1,000 Vorthak warriors moving up the valley in perfect formation, supported by hover tanks and aerial gunships. It was enough firepower to level a city. He checked his remaining ammunition, 2 magazines for his rifle and a handful of grenades. It would not be enough, not nearly enough. But Sergeant Kim Daiho had not held the line for 4 days by accepting defeat. He had one last card to play, one final gambit that might buy the time his people needed. He began typing commands into the quantum communicator, accessing systems he had never touched before. If he was going to die, he would make sure his death meant something. The battle for Firebase Delta 7 was about to reach its climax. Day 5 arrived with the sound of 1,000 alien voices chanting war songs. General Thys had decided to end the siege with overwhelming force. His entire army surrounded Firebase Delta 7, blocking every possible escape route. Daiho watched from his hidden position in the North Tower. His body was failing now. 4 days of constant fighting had pushed him beyond normal human limits. Stimulant drugs kept him awake, but his hands shook when he tried to aim his rifle. The wounds on his arms had become infected. Every movement sent pain through his body. His water supply was nearly gone and he had eaten nothing but emergency rations for 2 days. But his mind remained sharp as steel, focused on the single goal that kept him alive. Hold the line. The first wave hit just after dawn. 500 Vorthak warriors charged up the mountain road while hover tanks provided covering fire. Their plasma cannons lit up the morning sky with deadly green light. Deho had prepared for this moment. During the night, he had rigged the base's emergency power system to overload on command. When the aliens reached the outer perimeter, he triggered the explosion. The blast shook the entire mountain. Rocks and debris rained down on the attacking force, crushing dozens of warriors and destroying 2 hover tanks. The survivors fell back in confusion, their neat formations scattered by the unexpected trap. But Deho paid a price for his victory. The explosion damaged the base's main structure, causing part of the north wall to collapse. He barely escaped, as tons of stone crashed down where he had been standing. General Thuss studied the smoking ruins through his field glasses. The human had just destroyed part of his own fortress to stop the attack. What kind of creature would make such a sacrifice? He fights like a cornered animal, Thuss muttered to his lieutenant. But even animals can be broken. The second assault came from 3 directions at once. Thuss had learned from his mistakes. This time his warriors advanced slowly and carefully, checking every pile of rubble for hidden traps. Deho met them with everything he had left. He moved through the ruins like a hunting cat, striking without warning and vanishing before the aliens could respond. His rifle claimed target after target, each shot perfectly placed. When his ammunition ran low, he switched to captured Vorthak weapons. The alien plasma rifles were heavier than human guns, but they packed more punch. Each green bolt could punch through steel armor or melt solid rock. The battle raged for hours. Deho turned every room into a fortress, every corridor into a killing ground. He used mirrors to see around corners and pipes to crawl between floors. When the aliens thought they had him trapped, he would appear behind them like a vengeful spirit. By afternoon, General Thuss had lost another 200 warriors. His remaining soldiers moved through the base in small groups, afraid to enter any room alone. They had started calling the human defender by a new name, the Ghost of Hangman's Valley. The stories they told grew more incredible with each battle. Some warriors claimed the ghost could walk through solid walls. Others swore he could see perfectly in total darkness. A few even believed he was already dead, that they were fighting the angry spirit of a human warrior who refused to accept defeat. Deho knew nothing of these legends. He was too busy staying alive and killing aliens. On day 6, he found a medical kit in the wreckage and managed to treat his worst wounds. The antibiotics helped fight the infection, but he could feel his strength fading with each passing hour. That evening brought visitors he had not expected. 3 Vorthak shamans climbed the mountain path, their scaled faces painted with religious symbols. They carried no weapons, only strange devices that hummed with alien energy. General Thuss met them at his command post. The shamans were old and wise keepers of ancient Vorthak traditions. They spoke in whispers, their yellow eyes filled with fear. "The mountain spirits are angry," the eldest shaman said. "They have accepted the human sacrifice and granted him power beyond mortal flesh. His rage has become part of the stone itself." Thuss wanted to dismiss such superstition, but he had seen things that defied rational explanation. How else could one man hold back an entire army for 6 days? How could a single human appear in so many places at once? "What do you counsel?" Thuss asked reluctantly. "Withdraw," the shaman replied. "This place is cursed now. The ghost will never rest until every invader is driven from his domain." But General Thuss had not conquered 12 worlds by retreating from difficult battles. He would not be defeated by one human, no matter how impossible that human seemed to be. "Double the guard tonight," he ordered his officers. "Tomorrow we finish this." Deho spent day 6 preparing his final defenses. He had turned the collapsed sections of the base into a maze of death traps and hidden firing positions. Every piece of equipment became a weapon in his hands. He rigged the base's communication array to broadcast false signals, making it seem like reinforcements were on the way. He used the ventilation system to spread the smell of cooking food, suggesting the base held more defenders than just himself. Most importantly, he accessed the planetary defense grid through his quantum communicator. The system controlled automated satellites and orbital weapons platforms. If he could not hold the line with conventional weapons, perhaps he could hold it with the power of the stars themselves. Day 7 brought the heaviest fighting yet. General, Thais threw everything at the firebase: infantry, armor, aircraft, and orbital bombardment. The mountain pass became a hellscape of fire and destruction. Daiho met the assault with desperate courage. He had only a handful of grenades left and 2 magazines of ammunition. When those ran out, he would fight with his bare hands if necessary. The aliens breached the outer defenses by mid-morning. They poured into the ruined base like a green tide, plasma rifles blazing. Daiho fell back to his final position in the Central Command Bunker, a reinforced chamber built deep into the mountain's heart. From there, he controlled his last desperate gambit. Using the quantum communicator, he accessed the orbital defense satellites high above Kepler 442b. The weapons were designed to stop enemy fleets, not ground troops, but Daiho had found a way to reprogram their targeting systems. Beams of pure energy lanced down from space, turning sections of the firebase into molten glass. Vorthak warriors vanished in bursts of superheated plasma. The mountain itself seemed to be fighting back, striking down invaders with the wrath of an angry god. General Thys watched in horror as his assault force was decimated by weapons that fired from the heavens. The human had somehow gained control of the planetary defenses. He was not just a soldier anymore. He had become a force of nature. "Fall back," Thys ordered, his voice barely a whisper. "Fall back to minimum safe distance." The surviving Vorthak warriors retreated down the mountain, carrying stories that would haunt their dreams for years to come. They had seen the impossible, one man holding back an army with weapons that struck like lightning from the sky. In the command bunker, Daiho slumped against the wall. The orbital strikes had bought him time, but they had also drained the satellites, power cells. He would not be able to use that trick again. His body was failing fast now. The stimulant drugs were losing their effect and exhaustion weighed on him like a heavy blanket. He had been fighting for 7 days with almost no rest, living on willpower and determination alone. But he was not finished yet. The quantum communicator showed that evacuation ships were finally approaching New Busan City. If he could hold out for just one more day, 50,000 people would escape to safety. Daiho checked his remaining supplies. No ammunition, no grenades, no working weapons except for a damaged plasma rifle he had taken from a dead alien. But he still had one final card to play: the base's power reactor. The fusion generator had been damaged in the fighting. Its safety, systems offline. With the right modifications, it could be turned into a bomb powerful enough to level the entire mountain pass. It would mean his death, but it would also mean victory. As the sun set on day 7, Daiho began his final preparations. He rigged the reactor for overload, setting a timer that would give him just enough time to make his last stand. When the Vorthak came for him tomorrow, they would find more than just a human soldier waiting. They would find a ghost who refused to die. A spirit of defiance that would echo through the ages. The battle for Firebase Delta 7 was about to reach its climax, and Sergeant Kim Daiho intended to make it a finale that neither side would ever forget. Outside in the valley, General Thys gathered his remaining forces for one final assault. 3,000 warriors prepared their weapons and said prayers to their war gods. Tomorrow they would face the ghost one last time. Neither side knew that the galaxy was about to witness something that would become legend, the moment when one man's courage burned so bright that it lit up the darkness for 1,000 years. Day 8 dawned gray and cold over Hangman's Valley. Thick clouds hung low over the mountains, as if the sky itself mourned what was about to happen. In the ruins of Firebase Delta 7, Sergeant Kim Daiho made his final preparations. His body was a map of pain. 7 days of fighting had left him with infected wounds, broken ribs, and burns from plasma fire. The stimulant drugs no longer worked. His hands shook so badly he could barely hold his weapon, but his eyes still burned with fierce determination. The quantum communicator crackled with incoming messages. The evacuation fleet had reached New Busan City and begun loading civilians onto transport ships. 50,000 men, women, and children were finally safe, but they needed more time to reach the jump point and escape to hyperspace. Daiho calculated the timing in his head. The transports needed 6 more hours to reach minimum safe distance. The reactor would explode in 4 hours. That left him 2 hours to hold the line with nothing but a damaged plasma rifle in his bare hands. It would have to be enough. General Thiss stood on the hill overlooking the firebase, his yellow eyes filled with a mixture of rage and respect. 7 days of fighting had cost him over 1,000 warriors. His reputation as an unstoppable conqueror was ruined, but he had learned something valuable about the human spirit. "Today we finish this," he told his assembled army. "The ghost has fought well, but even spirits can be destroyed." 3,000 Vorthak warriors filled the valley floor. They carried heavy weapons and wore full battle armor. Theiss had brought everything he had left: infantry, armor, aircraft, and orbital support ships. No single human, no matter how determined, could stand against such overwhelming force. The final assault began at dawn. Wave after wave of alien soldiers charged up the mountain road, while hover tanks blasted away what remained of the fire base's walls. Plasma cannons lit up the morning sky, turning stone into molten glass. Daiho met them at the breach in the outer wall. His stolen plasma rifle spat green death, each shot perfectly aimed. The first rank of attackers fell, then the second, then the third. For a moment, it seemed like the ghost of Firebase Delta 7 might hold back even this massive assault. But numbers tell in the end. The aliens poured through gaps in the defenses, surrounding the lone human defender. Daiho fell back deeper into the base, fighting from room to room as the enemy closed in. He had turned the ruins into a deadly maze. Every corridor was a trap, every doorway a killing ground. Aliens would enter rooms only to find walls rigged with explosives or ceiling panels that dropped crushing weights. The ghosts seemed to be everywhere at once, striking without warning and vanishing into the shadows. General Theiss followed the assault personally, determined to face the human who had defied his army for 8 days. He found bodies scattered throughout the base, not just Vorthak warriors, but evidence of impossible battles fought by one man against dozens. How? Thiss whispered to himself. How did one human do all this? The answer came in the form of green plasma fire from a hidden position. Daiho appeared at the end of a corridor, his weapon raised and ready. For a moment, the two warriors faced each other across the smoke-filled ruins. General Thiss was 8 feet tall and covered in battle scars from a dozen conquered worlds. He carried weapons that could level buildings and wore armor that could stop cannon fire. He was everything a Vorthak warrior was supposed to be. Daiho was a 28-year-old engineer from Seoul who fixed broken machines. He stood barely 6 feet tall and weighed less than half what his opponent did. His armor was cracked and his weapon was stolen. By every measure that mattered, he should have died days ago. But he was still standing. "You fight well for a human," General Theiss said in broken English, his voice filled with genuine respect. "Your courage honors your species." "I fight for my family," Daiho replied, his voice hoarse from smoke and exhaustion. "For people who never asked for war." Thiss nodded, slowly. "Then you die as a true warrior should." The two soldiers opened fire at the same moment. Plasma bolts crossed in the air, lighting up the ruined corridor with deadly fire. Both men dove for cover as energy beams melted stone and metal around them. The battle was brief, but fierce. Theiss had superior weapons and armor, but Daiho knew, the base like his own body. He used hidden passages and carefully placed mirrors to attack from unexpected angles. In the end, it was Daiho's damaged weapon that decided the fight. The stolen plasma rifle overheated and exploded in his hands, filling the corridor with smoke and shrapnel. When the air cleared, both warriors lay wounded on the floor. General Thiss struggled to his feet, his armor cracked and his left arm hanging, useless. Daiho remained on the ground, his chest rising and falling with labored breathing. Blood ran from a dozen wounds, and his face was pale as winter snow. but his eyes still burned with defiant fire. "It is finished," Theiss said, raising his weapon for the killing shot. "You have fought well, Ghost. Your death will be remembered." Daiho smiled, and the expression was terrifying on his blood-covered face. "General," he whispered, "you should have asked about the reactor." Theiss felt a chill of fear run down his spine. "What reactor?" "The one that explodes in 30 seconds. The Vorthak general's eyes went wide with horror. Through the base's communication system, he could hear the growing whine of an overloading fusion generator. The sound was unmistakable to anyone who had fought in space battles. "You madman," Theiss breathed. "You'll kill us both." "That was always the plan," Daiho replied. "I hold the line, no matter what." General Theiss could have run. He could have abandoned the human and tried to reach minimum safe distance. Instead, he knelt beside his fallen enemy and placed a scaled hand on Daiho's shoulder. "You are worthy of the warrior's path," he said formally. "I am honored to die beside you." Daiho looked up at the alien general who had been his enemy for 8 days. In those yellow eyes he saw something he had not expected: respect, understanding, and a strange kind of friendship born from shared courage. "Tell me about your family," Theiss said quietly as the reactor's whine grew louder. "My sister just had a baby," Daiho whispered. "A little girl. She sent me pictures last month." "I have 3 sons," Theiss replied. "Warriors all. They will sing songs of this battle when they reach the warrior's age. Will they sing about me too? They will sing of the ghost who held the line against impossible odds. They will remember the human who fought like a god of war." The reactor reached critical mass with a sound like thunder. Deep in the mountain's heart, fusion fires broke free of their magnetic containment. For just a moment, Firebase Delta 7 held the heart of a star. The explosion could be seen from orbit. It turned the entire mountain pass into a crater of molten glass, sealing Hangman's Valley forever. The shockwave shattered windows in New Busan City 50 miles away. When the light faded, nothing remained of the firebase except a perfectly round hole in the landscape. In the Vorthak fleet orbiting above, the surviving officers watched their screens in stunned silence. General Theiss and 3,000 warriors had simply vanished, erased by the fury of an unleashed atom. But the human ghost was gone too, finally at rest after 8 days of impossible defiance. The battle for Firebase Delta 7 was over. The last man standing had kept his promise. He had held the line. High above the planet, the evacuation transports reached the jump point and vanished into hyperspace. 50,000 civilians escaped to safety, carrying with them the story of one man who refused to surrender. They would tell their children and grandchildren about Sergeant Kim Daiho, the engineer who became a legend. In the smoking crater where the fire base once stood, alien and human atoms mingled in the molten stone. The ghost and the general had found peace together. Their long battle finally ended. But the legend was just beginning. Across the galaxy, both human and Vorthak survivors would carry the tale of Hangman's Valley. They would speak of courage that burned brighter than fusion fire, of one man's stand against impossible odds. The war was far from over, but it had gained a new meaning. Whenever soldiers faced hopeless battles, they would remember the ghost of Firebase Delta 7. They would remember that sometimes one person's courage can light up the darkness for everyone else. Sergeant Kim Daiho had wanted to fix things. In Mito, the end, he had fixed the most important thing of all. He had shown the galaxy what the human spirit could accomplish when it refused to break. The line had been held. The innocent were safe. The legend would never die. 5 years after the Battle of Hangman's Valley, the war between humanity and the Vorthak Empire finally ended. The peace treaty was signed in the same system where Sergeant Kim Daiho had made his legendary stand. Representatives from both species gathered to mark the end of decades of conflict. The human delegation arrived aboard the battleship Seoul, named in honor of Daiho's hometown. The Vorthak fleet was led by the dreadnought Theiss Honor, carrying the name of the general who had died. Beside a human soldier in the ruins of Firebase Delta 7, Admiral Lee Sora commanded the human forces. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but she had earned her rank through 20 years of hard fighting. The Vorthak delegation was led by War Chief Krex, General Tiss's eldest son. The two leaders met in the conference room of a neutral space station. Between them lay a holographic display, showing the crater where Firebase Delta 7 once stood. The molten glass had cooled into a perfect circle of black stone that reflected the stars like a mirror. "Your father died with honor," Admiral Lee said, formally. "He chose to face death beside a brave enemy rather than flee alone." War Chief Krex nodded slowly. He was young for a Vorthak leader, but his yellow eyes held the wisdom of one who had learned hard lessons. "The human sergeant taught us something important about courage. My father recognized a true warrior when he saw one." The peace negotiations took 3 days. Both sides had grown tired of war, tired of losing good soldiers to battles that seemed to have no end. The ghost of Firebase Delta 7 haunted every discussion, reminding everyone that individual courage could change the course of history. When the treaty was finally signed, it contained an unusual clause. The Vorthak Empire formally renamed Kepler 442b to Deho's world in their own language. It was an unprecedented honor from a species that had never before named a planet after an enemy. "Why?" Admiral Lee asked War Chief Krex after the ceremony. "Why honor a human who killed so many of your people?" Krex was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the stars through the station's viewport. "Because he showed us what we could become," he finally said. "For 8 days, one man held back an entire army through courage alone. That kind of strength deserves respect, no matter what species it comes from." The news of the planet's renaming spread quickly through both empires. On Earth, Deho's family received visitors from around the world. His sister, now a mother of 2, found herself hosting diplomats and military officers who wanted to pay their respects. "He was just a quiet boy who liked to fix things," she told them, holding a picture of her brother in his engineering uniform. "He never wanted to be a soldier. He just wanted to help people." But the galaxy saw something different in Sergeant Kim Deho. He had become a symbol of human determination, proof that one person could make a difference when everything seemed hopeless. His story was taught in military academies, told in songs, and passed down through generations. On Deho's world, something remarkable began to happen. The planet became a pilgrimage site for veterans of both species. Human and Vorthak soldiers would travel there to visit the crater where Firebase Delta 7 once stood. They came to remember fallen comrades and to find inspiration for their own battles. The first memorial was simple, a bronze plaque placed at the edge of the crater by surviving members of the 47th Heavy Infantry Division. It read, "Sergeant." Kim Deho held the line. 50,000 souls lived because one man would not yield. But as the years passed, the memorial grew. Veterans added stones from their home worlds, creating a cairn that reached toward the sky. Vorthak warriors left weapons and armor as offerings. Human soldiers brought flowers and photographs of loved ones. The most moving addition came from War Chief Krex himself. He traveled to Deho's world on the 10th anniversary of the battle and placed a simple stone tablet beside the human memorial. Written in both human and Vorthak languages, it said, "Here lies General Tice, who chose honor over survival. Here lies Sergeant Deho, who chose duty over life. Here lies the proof that courage has no species." The crater itself became a place of pilgrimage and meditation. Visitors would sit on the rim of the glass circle and think about sacrifice, courage, and the cost of peace. Some claimed they could still hear the echo of gunfire on quiet nights, as if the ghost of Firebase Delta 7 continued his eternal watch. Schools on both human and Vorthak worlds began teaching about the Battle of Hangman's Valley. Children learned about the engineering sergeant who became a legend, the general who died beside his enemy, and the civilians who escaped because one man refused to surrender. The story took on different meanings for different people. Military officers saw it as a lesson in tactical innovation and fighting spirit. Diplomats pointed to it as proof that enemies could find common ground. Parents told it to their children as an example of standing up for what was right. But perhaps the most important legacy was the change it brought to both species. The Vorthak, who had always valued physical strength above all else, began to understand that true power came from the spirit. Humans learned that their greatest weapon was not their technology, but their refusal to give up when others would, surrender. 20 years after the battle, a young Vorthak warrior named Sal made the journey to Deho's world. He was the grandson of a soldier who had fought at Firebase Delta 7 and survived to tell the tale. Sal had grown up hearing stories of the human ghost who appeared everywhere at once. At the memorial, he met an elderly human woman placing flowers on the bronze plaque. She was Deho's sister, now in her 70s but still making the annual pilgrimage to honor her brother's memory. "Your people call him a ghost," she said to Saal in careful Vorthak. "But to me, he was just my little brother who always tried to fix things that were broken." Saal studied the old woman's face, seeing the same quiet strength that had made her brother legendary. "He fixed more than anyone could have imagined," he replied in fluent human speech. "He fixed the future." As night fell over Deho's world, the two unlikely friends sat together at the edge of the crater. Above them, the stars shone with the same light that had witnessed the impossible stand of Sergeant Kim Deho. In the distance, other pilgrims maintained their own quiet vigils. A group of human Marines shared stories with Vorthak veterans. Children of both species played together near the memorial, their laughter a sound that would have amazed the soldiers who died here decades ago. "Do you think he knew?" Sal asked, quietly. "Do you think your brother understood what his sacrifice would mean?" Deho's sister smiled, remembering the last message her brother had sent from Firebase Delta 7. "He said he was just doing his job, fixing something that was broken. He never thought of himself as a hero." "But he was wrong," Sal replied. "He was the greatest hero of all, one who never knew he was heroic." As the hours passed, more visitors gathered at the crater's edge. This happened every night on Deho's world. People came to remember, to reflect, and to find strength for their own battles. The memorial had become more than just a tribute to one man's courage. It had become a symbol of hope. An old Vorthak veteran told stories of the siege to a group of young cadets. His voice carried across the still air as he described the impossible defense, the ghost who appeared everywhere at once, the human who fought like a god of war. "We called him the stubborn ghost," the veteran said, "because no matter how many times we thought we had killed him, he kept fighting. Even death could not make him surrender." Near the memorial plaque, a human chaplain led a prayer service for families who had lost loved ones in various wars. The words were spoken in multiple languages, but the meaning was universal, that sacrifice for others was the highest calling of any sentient being. As midnight approached, something remarkable happened. A soft wind began to blow across the crater, carrying with it the faint sound of voices. Visitors claimed they could hear whispers in the darkness, not frightening but comforting. Old soldiers said it was the ghost of Firebase Delta 7, still standing watch over those who came to honor his memory. Scientists explained it as wind currents moving through the crystallized glass formations, creating acoustic effects that resembled human speech. But the pilgrims preferred their own interpretation. They believed that Sergeant Kim Deho's spirit remained bound to this place, watching over the peace he had helped to create. The legend continued to grow with each passing year. New stories were added to the old ones. Some claimed the ghost appeared to lost travelers, guiding them to safety. Others said he visited wounded soldiers in field hospitals, offering comfort in their darkest hours. Whether these tales were true or not mattered less than what they represented. The stubborn ghost had become a symbol of hope that transcended species boundaries. In a galaxy often torn by conflict, he reminded everyone that individual courage could light the way to a better future. 50 years after the Battle of Hangman's Valley, the last survivor of the siege passed away. She was a Vorthak communications officer who had watched the impossible defense from the alien command post. Her final words were recorded by her grandson. "The human taught us that some things are worth dying for, but more importantly, he taught us that those same things are worth living for." Her death marked the end of an era, but the beginning of something new. The generation that had witnessed the battle was gone, but the legend lived on in the hearts and minds of billions across the galaxy. Military academies of both species made pilgrimage to Deho's world a required part of their training. Young officers would stand where Firebase Delta 7 once stood and try to imagine how one man could accomplish the impossible. They learned that technology and tactics were important, but that nothing could replace the power of an unbreakable spirit. The peace between humans and Vorthax grew stronger with each passing decade. Trade flourished, cultures mixed, and former enemies became trusted allies. When new threats emerged from the galaxy's unexplored regions, the two species stood together, against the darkness. In every battle, soldiers would invoke the name of the stubborn ghost. "Remember Daiho" became a battle cry that inspired impossible victories and heroic sacrifices. The engineering sergeant who just wanted to fix things had become the spiritual guardian of two civilizations. And on quiet nights, when the wind blew across the crater on Daiho's world, visitors still claimed they could hear the faint echo of automatic weapons fire. Not the sound of death and destruction, but the sound of one man's promise being kept across the centuries. The line was still being held. It would always be held, as long as there were those who remembered the lesson of Firebase Delta 7, that sometimes the greatest victories come not from strength or numbers, but from a simple refusal to surrender when everything depends on standing firm. Sergeant Kim Daeho had held the line for 8 days against impossible odds. In doing so, he had held it forever, creating a legacy that would inspire heroes for 1,000 generations to come. The stubborn ghost was at peace, but his watch would never end.